Job seekers of Reddit, have you ever turned down a job or walked out of an interview because of something the interviewer said or did? Oh yeah, when I was 20 this woman tried to hire me for juggling lessons for her 17-year-old autistic son. I perform at a music therapy event every year and do a group lesson for all the kids, most of which suffer from some disability. So I drive 45 minutes to her house and she starts talking about how this is a full-time job. We need to be on call all the time. You are going to have to stop taking college classes. Your duties include helping him wipe and giving him a bath every night. The pay is $8/HR. Yeah, no thanks lady. I was desperately hunting for a job during college and found myself answering ads in the paper. I responded to a few vague no experience necessary ads and was surprised to find that all 3 of them were for Kirby vacuums. Annoyingly, none of them admitted it over the phone, and I wouldn't find out until arriving for the interview and wasting my time and gas. I decided that it was likely all the vague ads were commission-only scams and responded to an ad looking for a secretary. They promptly scheduled an interview, and I arrived to find they were Kirby vacuums. They justified themselves by saying that I would be filing some paperwork during the course of sales, so it somehow was a secretary position. I walked out. I responded to an ad that clearly stated they were looking for people to help load and unload electronics at a place called Aloha Sound Systems. When I got there, they too were Kirby. They met me with a lame excuse about occupying a building that had once housed Aloha Sound Systems, so they were somehow justified in using their name, and that vacuums were electronics, so they never lied. I walked out. I was mostly through college and had some limited knowledge of computer animation and took a chance and responded to an ad looking for an assistant to help with some animating. I drove out for the interview and was shooting the breeze with the secretary, and we came to the series of job interview bait and switches Kirby had pulled on me and how happy I was to see an ad for a job that couldn't possibly be Kirby. I looked over and the secretary was staring at me red-faced and tight-lipped, and I just said no fucking way as she launched into a hasty justification about being allowed to make multimedia presentations to help me sell vacuums. It was like a scene out of a sitcom. As a very naive 18-year-old, I responded to an ad that said they were looking for masseuses and were willing to train. I gave them a call, and the woman I spoke with was very nice and said lots of positive things about the job. She must have caught on to how clueless I was though, because at one point she just kind of bluntly asked, "You do know this job involves sex, right?" Flustered, I thanked her and hung up. I was brought into an interview with the information that the company was looking to hire administrative assistants. I sat through about 5 minutes of my interview, and then the interviewer says to me, "Before we get started, how quickly can you purchase a vehicle?" Confused, I explain I'm currently unemployed, so purchasing a vehicle is out of the question. Does the administrative position require errands as part of the duties? Interviewer says, "Oh, we hired the admin positions already, but we felt you would be perfect for sales." I'll let them know they had completely wasted my time, and it was incredibly unprofessional, and left. Yeah, I was doing a phone interview with a company in Florida Keys. My interviewer told me the salary, not nearly enough to pay for the cost of living, said I would always have to work weekends, and I would never ever get a raise. Ever. Then he tells me that if I'm considered one of the top 3 candidates, I would be expected to fly out to Florida on my own dime for an in-person interview. Then he asked me if I were picked for the top 3, when would be the soonest I could fly out to Florida. I started explaining to him that I need to give 2 weeks notice to get a day off, so 2 weeks from now. Then he said, "Well, what about Wednesday?" It was Friday, so I was like, 5 days from now? When he said yes, I started laughing and said, "Are you kidding me?" Dude got mad and snapped at me, "Yes, I'm serious. We are trying to get this position filled as fast as possible. We don't have time to wait 2 weeks. If you don't think you can fly down here sooner rather than later, then maybe you're not the right candidate for this position." To which I replied, "Yeah, you're right. I don't think I'm the right candidate for this position." My interviewer immediately softened and started saying stuff like, "Well, wait a minute, let's talk about this. We seem to have gotten off track. Tell me more about your experience." and when I kept saying, "Look, I'm clearly not a good choice for your company," he kept cutting me off and insisting that we continue the interview. A few days later, I got a call from the company again, informing me that I was one of the top 3 candidates. Congratulations, way to go. So when should they expect me for my interview? Cue another 5-ish minutes of insisting that I didn't want the job before finally cutting them off and hanging up. Interviewer told me if I wanted to work there I'd have to violate the legally binding confidentiality of my previous employer. I promptly stood up, shook his hand, and said, "Guess I don't want to work here." About 10 years later, same guy shot/killed his wife and a passerby in a parking garage. Several times now, actually. The most hilarious one. There was a promotions company that needed a graphic designer to add to their team of 4. We were walking and interviewing so they could show me the office, and they got to where I would be working. It was a closet. There were 4 people in there, desks pushed along every wall. The back of their chairs touched, they were so crammed close together. Their Mac screens were edge to edge all the way around. There were no lights. I repeat, literally no lights. They looked up at us as we opened the door with like giant Mac screen glowing eyeballs. It was the creepiest and most bizarre workspace I'd ever seen. When we started walking back to the interviewer's office, I basically said I had to go. They offered me the job the next day, and I said no. While I was in college I found a job looking to hire someone for a management position in a sales company. As my major was business management, I thought, hey great. I called them up and asked them if this was actually for a sales job, as I was suspicious that they would be straight up hiring people outside of the company for management. They assured me it was not. When I got there for the interview I was led into a room with about 20 other interviewees. We then watched a product demo video about whatever crap they were selling. After the video they started to tell us about how much of the product we were expected to sell, etc. I politely interrupted the speaker and asked if this position was a sales job or a management job, as I had already clarified that on the phone. The speaker gave me a subtle "oops you got me" look and confirmed that it actually was a sales job. I thanked the speaker, stood up and walked out of the conference room without looking back. I was about 20 years old and felt like a total badass as the other interviewees stared in shock at me. I had an interview with a marketing company. I walked into their office and on the wall it said marketing company. That was not their name. Everything looked like it had been set up the night before. At the end of the interview, the interviewer gave me a business card. Not his business card, but the business card of some other company that used to have his current phone number. He crossed out their name and put his own. The interview was about 4 to 5 months ago, but I remember there seemed to be a red flag every few minutes or so of her talking. You cannot do any freelancing after hours, even if it's for free. I don't need you staying up until midnight and coming in tired. In my head I wanted to say, but what if I'm up to midnight, having sex every night? Would that be okay? The guys here have no idea about attention to detail. I think that's a guy thing, but I can't trust them to not make mistakes. When I asked why the previous designer was leaving, it's just time for her to move on. I mean, she gets here at 9 AM and won't even say good morning to those around her. Mind you, I don't want people chatting and looking at social networks even at lunchtime. That's why I've got full view of everyone's workstations. Slagging off about her employees in general egged the studio manager with teenage daughter problems. I'm sure there were other things I've forgotten because I remember being so incredulous. But my favorite red flag interview question, I always ask, what would your employees say is the best thing about working here? Good employers with good environments can instantly respond with favorable responses and be enthusiastic and credible with their replies. This woman. She paused. She continued pausing. It was like I'd asked her the last question to win $1 million. Her brow furrowed, and finally she responded with, well, the freelancers I get in say it's a nice quiet place to work. Seriously, woman. You can't even answer off the top of your head. Freelancers are not your regular employees. And that is what you see as the most enticing benefit of working here? Yes. The temp agency I work for sent me to interview at this tech place in the summer of 2013. And from the moment I set foot in the building, everyone there was super rude to me. The security guard didn't even greet me when I came in. She just barked at me that I can't bring my purse inside and that I need to go move my car to the guest lot, which turned out to be literally a quarter mile away. So I move my car, leave my purse in it, and trudge back to the building in 105-degree Texas heat in my now damp business casual outfit, only to be greeted by a sour-faced Taiwanese lady who scowled at me and told me to follow her and hurry up. She gave me 2 boards to solder, and when she graded the first board and told me sharply that it was no good, I failed the second board on purpose. No good my ass. I used to solder for Hitachi, I'm damn good too, but this place's equipment was something out of a third world country. Right after I left, I called the temp agency and told them to find me something else cause I'd rather gargle hot garbage juice than work at that dump. None of the employees were smiling, the place was dirty and run down, and the whole atmosphere was just depressing and suffocating. Yes, interviewer was 25 minutes late, was rude and bitchy, asked questions that were extremely irrelevant, more so than normal job questions. The interviewer had no knowledge of the job or technologies involved, misspoke and used incorrect words to describe things, stated their leadership style was basically do what I say or leave. They also had a strict dress code of suits/tie, even though the department was not customer facing at all. I asked why. She said that wearing casual clothes is a bad practice because employees wouldn't be serious and get work done. When I asked her what she thought would happen, she basically, in so many words, said we would all just forget we're at work and goof off all day because we would be relaxed. She was dressed like shit FYI wearing a muumuu. Stated they wanted someone who had 5+ years experience with Windows 8/8, 1 and millisecond Office 2013/OneDrive. When I explained that these technologies had only been out recently, at the time, she became furious and stated plenty of people applied with more experience than she was asking. So, basically this lady was incompetent. Not sure how she got her job, but she basically told me there was no work-life balance, no teamwork or camaraderie, and she knew jack shit about software dev. This is my most upvoted comment ever. Thanks everyone. The interviewer didn't know what position I was applying for. We had just talked to 15 minutes. Then he quoted me an hourly rate way less than what was advertised, then tried to get me to sign a piece of paper where the hourly wage was blank so he could fill it in later. Yup. For a local Village Voice type of newspaper in my hometown. The editor was just a complete condescending asshole. He said he didn't believe my resume. I was pretty young and had done a lot as I had been supporting my family since my mother became ill when I was 14. He told me to write 28 questions right in front of him about the position. It was a marketing position that we had gone over for about an hour already, and then he would read the questions. I reluctantly started to write and he said, "Just because you have experience doesn't mean you're not a loser without a degree." Walked out. Hell yeah. Early in my career I was applying for an hourly help desk. I was advised that up until 40 hours a week we were hourly and would be paid for hours worked, but that when we were required to work overtime, we would be paid as salaried employees for our 40 hours. They explained that they weren't profitable enough to pay more. So I advised them that it was against the law to have policies like that and got up and left.